From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. The Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arraza is in Syria for a 2-day visit. He started his trip at the Unknown Soldier Monument, where he left a wreath in homage to Syrian soldiers who gave their lives in defense of the nation. The Venezuelan official was received by the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Arraza also participated in a meeting of solidarity with Venezuela. The foreign minister thanked the support of Syria in facing U.S. aggressions. He also thanked social movements, students, and political parties for their expressions of support for the Venezuelan peoples. And after his meeting with Bashar al-Assad, Arraza met his counterpart Walid al-Mu'allim to address the increasing cooperation between their nations. They also shared their vision on the magnitude of the U.S. aggressions against their peoples. A Russia-Venezuela Joint Commission has held talks to discuss development and strategic cooperation. The Venezuelan delegation is being led by Planning Vice President Ricardo Menendez. Thursday's meeting will include representatives from 300 companies. The talks will finish on Friday with the signing of several agreements on agri-food, science and technology, as well as services, hydrocarbons and defense. Meanwhile, in Venezuela, the 30-day plan for the recovery of electricity is being implemented. On Wednesday night, President Nicolás Maduro condemned attempts to impose chaos in the country through an attack on public services in the country.
Venezuela is experiencing the first non-conventional war that aims at undermining public services in order to change a government. Orchestrated by the United States. It's the first war of an electric, cybernetic, electromagnetic and physical nature that seeks to overthrow a democratically elected and legitimate government and impose chaos.
Our correspondent Luis Tavera has more from Caracas.
The president referred to the plans of the international right against Venezuela. He said he has more details that he will reveal soon, but that these plans include criminal acts against the entire Venezuelan population. He pointed out that this is the first electronic war against a constitutional government to try to overthrow it. But he said that the government's contingency plans have managed to preserve stability in the country, which of course has been evident in our own reports in recent days. The electricity supply is returning to normal as the government's 30-day plan helps to provide stability. At the same time, the Venezuelan foreign minister is continuing his international tour to condemn the attacks on Venezuela, while the Constituent Assembly has taken measures against those who are backing the attempts to destabilize the country.
We thank Luis Tavera for that report. And moving on, 2 students of Colombia's Univalle University are dead as a result of police repression and an explosion at the building. 1 student died when Special Forces police intercepted a student protest in support of the Minga Social demonstrations. At the same time, an explosion in the university's cafeteria killed another student. The cause of the blast is not yet known. Indigenous, Campesino and Afro-descendant communities have been mobilizing in Colombia for over 3 weeks now as part of the Minga Social protest. The police have continuously repressed these marches, often violently, killing at least 1 indigenous protester. Communities demand that the government fulfill its agreements regarding their lands and their rights. The dialogue between the community and the government is set to restart this Thursday. And on Wednesday night, an indigenous leader said they will take Popayán, the capital of the Cauca department, if the attacks against them don't stop.
They have turned down the regional council. They have destroyed the Minga. They say they are going to the university. This stops or we're going to take Popayán. Tell the unions, tell the criminals there, who are motivated by the unions. There are even some Venezuelans being paid there. Tell everyone in the Payaní city that if they want us to take Popayan, we will do it. It is that simple. And if tomorrow nothing is calm, we'll call off negotiations.
British members of parliament have approved a Brexit delay by a margin of 1 vote. The legislation passed through the House of Commons with 313 votes to 312. Labour MP Yvette Cooper made the proposal in a bid to avoid a no-deal exit from the EU, which would occur on April 12th. An extension would still have to be approved by the European Union. And following Brexit talks on Wednesday between the Prime Minister Theresa May and the leader of the opposition Jeremy Corbyn, negotiation teams from both sides have been meeting to try and find a way to exit the European Union. The Conservative Party leader appears to want to avoid the no-deal Brexit, favoured by right-wing elements in her party. And Labour has argued for a closer relationship with the EU, focusing on protection of workers' rights and the environment.
As to what Brexit is obviously different in that she's reaching out to the Labour Party, something that she should have done obviously 2 years ago. Having said that, I don't think Mr Corbyn is going to be any rush to make a deal with Mrs May, because I don't think he wants the Labour Party tarnished with the Brexit brush. They want the Conservative Party to own this Brexit deal, and then Labour will hopefully win an early election. That's the strategy for Mr Corbyn. I think there's a better chance, however, of getting a deal through Parliament next week, which is the second alternative that Theresa made to the nation last night.
2 Tory MPs resigned from their government roles following the meeting between May and Corbyn. Chris Heaton-Harris left his position, saying his job was irrelevant if no deal was off the table. Wales Minister Nigel Adams also quit, accusing the government of failing to deliver the Brexit the people voted for. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. President Donald Trump has said he would impose tariffs on Mexico if its authorities don't control the border with the U.S. This comes just a week after President Trump threatened to close the southern border.
If the drugs don't stop, Mexico can stop them if they want. We're going to tariff the cars. The cars are very big. And if that doesn't work, we're going to close the border. But I think that'll work. That's massive numbers of dollars. So if we don't see people apprehended and brought back to their countries, if we see these massive caravans coming up to our country right through Mexico, coming right through Mexico like nothing.
A massive demonstration is taking place in Argentina to demand that the authorities put an end to austerity measures that are affecting the working class. Our correspondent, Edgardo Esteban, is at the protest with the latest details.
Despite the rain, workers' unions and social movements are gathering in Buenos Aires to protest against the economic policies promoted by the government of Mauricio Macri and the austerity measures they have strengthened since the agreement signed with the International Monetary Fund. Demonstrators are marching towards Congress to demand lawmakers concrete actions to stop massive layoffs, to boost national production, and to stop the increase in the price of basic services that are affecting the working class. Unions of movement leaders have said that if the government does not announce concrete actions in response to these demands, they will call for a general strike in the upcoming days. This could become the 5th national strike during the government of Mauricio Macri.
We thank Edgardo for that report. Pineapple plantation workers are continuing to protest in Costa Rica for their rights. The protest took place in rural areas where there are large lands of pineapple crops. We have more in this report.
The pineapple workers were at the center of the protests during the first 3 months of the year. Many workers were fired after they created a labor union to negotiate terms with their employer. Since then, they have continued to protest, demanding that their rights be respected.
The goal of the protest is to come to an agreement with the company through the labor ministry, so our colleagues can go back to work. We also want the company to give us bonuses for Christmas, and we want the labor union to be recognized as a workers' organization and respected by the company.
The workers say they tried to address the issues they face, but were met with opposition by their bosses.
When the owners of the company realized we were creating labor unions with around 120 people becoming members, they started to take away our jobs.
The labor ministry acted as a mediator in the conflict, but the discussions did not have the expected results.
We are encouraging workers to take their matters to the courts because it is clear discrimination if they were fired because they joined the labor union.
Some of the workers could not wait anymore, and they looked for jobs somewhere else. Others were fired. In any case, their rights are still jeopardized.
This situation is not new. We have reported it since 6, 7, and 8 years ago. It became a topic of discussion in the public domain, but not with the intensity and relevance that we would have liked.
In the 21st century, Costa Rica keeps having problems from centuries ago.
We may think that these problems were already solved in this country, but that is not true. They keep happening in the most remote areas, in rural areas far from the cities.
Meanwhile, environmental activists are worried about the expansion of the pineapple crop industry and soil pollution from agrochemicals. In Costa Rica, pineapples are the main product for export, followed by bananas and coffee.
The UN General Assembly President Maria Fernanda Espinosa has visited Cuba to boost ties with the government and discuss topics like gender equality. Espinosa has so far met with Cuba's Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez. She is also set to meet with President Miguel Díaz-Canel. The UN top official also plans to address multilateralism issues while on the island.
It's always a pleasure to know that Cuba is an indispensable and strategic ally in the strengthening of the multilateral system, which we know can be complicated at times, that bring with it challenges for building global peace and a multilateral world order that is fairer, more equitable, and more democratic.
Jamaica's former Prime Minister Bruce Golding will lead a Commonwealth group to observe the parliamentary elections in the Maldives. Despite the Maldives' withdrawal from the Commonwealth in 2016, the country has expressed interest in rejoining. As part of this process, President Ibrahim Mohamed Soli requested observers from the Commonwealth. The polls are scheduled for this Sunday. The president has accused the opposition of trying to delay the election, but there is no official word of any postponement. Voting is underway in Jamaica's Portland Eastern constituency for its hotly contested by-election. The seat was left vacant following the murder of MP Dr. Linvale Bloomfield in February. Opposition candidate Damian Crawford is now up against the ruling party's Anne-Marie Vaz. It's also one of the most consequential by-elections in the country's recent political history. That's because when the final ballot is counted, the country will know whether the opposition would prevent the ruling party from increasing its narrow House majority. Just over 36,000 electors are eligible to vote. Undercover police could soon be operating in schools across Trinidad and Tobago. The plan was announced by Police Commissioner Gary Griffith to help tackle increasing student violence. The commissioner also announced plans to set up a domestic violence unit. High-tech equipment would enable officers to actually see the location from where a distress call was being made. People would be able to file reports of domestic violence through an online system. The head of the National Civil Police in El Salvador has said there have been 76 femicides in the country this year. Although that figure has declined since 2018, the country has one of the world's highest rates of violence against women. Nearly 400 women were killed in El Salvador last year.
With regards to women, the number of femicides in 2019 compared with 2018 has reduced considerably, by 30% overall. You can see that in the majority of departments there has been a reduction. There's only the department of La Unión and Morazán where there has been an increase in femicides. But if you look at Cuscatlan, for example, there has been a drop of 67%.
Repression, criminalization, and lack of justice are constant issues the Mapuche people are facing in Chile. That is why they have announced the creation of their own government with the goal of self-determination.
The face of the murdered Mapuche Camilo Catrillanca is lifted from the center of the protest. Less than 3 months ago, 2 special forces policemen connected to the killings of the Catrillanca were released without charges. Meanwhile, the Mapuche people are still faced with constant repression, as evidenced in the Temuco territory on Wednesday.
It's very clear that here in the Araucanía region there is an apartheid. It's the only part of the world where everyone can demonstrate, students, workers, women, but the Mapuche community cannot.
And the police have cooked up stories to justify the bullet that killed Catrillanca.
You were always involved in the murder of Catrillanca, with the robbery of the car and giving information that ended up being a conspiracy. So, Mr. President, I have the right to point to those responsible.
A 15-year-old teenager who was with Catrillanca when he died said that the former security forces policeman, Raul Avila, threatened him saying, "Do you want me to kill you as your friend?" The security forces, together with the Interior Ministry, have acted with irregularity.
I think we have to establish political responsibility and study the police behavior that day.
We have always said the truth. We want justice, and today the Mapuche people are thinking about self-determination.
That's why the Mapuche people have announced the creation of a Mapuche government.
We are announcing that today, the 3rd of April 2019, that at the end of April, the second session of the Mapuche Constituent Assembly will begin. The goal is to elaborate an agenda in order to form a government.
The government could start functioning by the end of May.
Brazilian authorities have stopped an attempted robbery at ATMs in the state of Sao Paulo. 10 assailants were killed during a shootout with the police, but in total, about 25 suspects were involved in the attempt to blow up the machines. It's not yet known if any suspect is in custody. Police say that the group was armed with high-caliber rifles and arrived in 5 armored cars. Former Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva left office in 2011 with an approval rating of 87%, the highest in the nation's history. From his first day in office, he fought against inequality across all social levels. Let's find out more in the second part of our series, looking at the life and work of the Latin American leader.
Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, the most popular president Brazil has ever had, will have been in prison for 1 year on April the 7th. The goal of his arrest was to damage his reputation and put a stop to his return to politics. Lula was in power for 10 years in the largest country in Latin America and was beloved by most. He won the 2002 elections after 22 years of fighting and building the Workers' Party. He will tell us we cannot err. What did he mean by that? A rule must focus on the poor and the working class. We have to break the state tradition of serving the rich. From 2003 to 2011, Lula's government stabilized the economy, lowered the unemployment rate, as well as the public debt, and brought Brazil onto the international stage. During his term in office, nearly 30 million people were pulled out of poverty, and a similar number got access to electricity.
He did not back down from anyone. No institution, no provocation. Lula battled against hunger and confronted ignorance, and he did so to overcome these issues. He fought to give us a Brazil that we have never had. He thought about doing good and offering opportunities for everyone. He thought of the people who had the least and the most vulnerable, who needed the state to help them out of misery.
The caravans that supported him were like a lifeline. That support gave him energy during the worst times. He loved to be in direct contact with people. According to his friends, Lula found strength in becoming the hope that would trump fear.
Lula is someone who, on 2 occasions, traveled throughout the whole of Brazil, from north to south, through thousands and thousands of kilometers. He wanted to meet people, to learn from them, to see what challenges they faced. In 2017, Lula once again carried out these caravans. Now, at a time when he cannot join us, we decided to retake the caravans. Before he was in prison, Lula used to say, "If something happens to me, you will be my legs. If something happens to me, I will talk to the Brazilian people through your voice."
His comrades don't see Lula as a conventional leader. He's a symbol of the workers' struggle, recalling the words of his mother, who used to tell him to always keep his head up. He has such dignity that it scare away opponents, and which continues to guide the work of activists.
We'll be back very soon. Stay with us. Welcome back. Land conflicts are one of the main reasons for the great insecurity endured by people living in North Kivu of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Ancient plantations were stolen by Belgian colonizers and then were turned into giant farms owned by the elite. Now, local farmers are at the mercy of armed groups set up to protect these stolen lands. Our special correspondent in Masisi, Austerity, has the story.
Shonga is a village in the Masisi Chefere Muhunde, and it's surrounded by land that's been privately owned since the colonial era. One of the landowners has tried to evict the whole village. He sent the army after the villagers, who had to flee, but they managed to organize to seek justice, and in the end, they recovered their land.
They wanted to deceive us by saying our lands were part of their plantation, and they initially won. They paid off officials and evicted us. They burned down houses, raped women, and robbed us. This is all part of our submission to the appeals court, and we wanted to move over to a criminal court.
The villagers won the third and fourth trial after showing that Shonga is their ancestral land and never belonged to any plantation.
Justice has to remain neutral, and it should help those living on the fringes. When we see increased military presence, we are seeing the result of corruption. The falsified document the landowners show came from the time of the RCD rebel movement. The people who founded the revolution have taken over almost all the old plantations of the Masisi territory.
When our elders died, they left those lands to us. The Muami Kalinda Mutizo recognizes those lands as ours.
The village chief was arrested by the National Intelligence Agency on charges of rebellion after he organized the people to fight for their rights.
We have received no help from the state, but we still have many needs. We need help with building infrastructure, most of all. Second, we need access to healthcare, to medicines, and to a medical center. And third, we need roads.
They don't even have a road suitable for motorcycles, and the local school has been mostly abandoned as the village needed all its money to pay lawyers.
Students haven't been able to pay the required fee of $10.
This case has cost us around $20,000.
This conflict is still in the courts, but the villagers are committed to defending their land and their rights. The owners of the next-door farm are supposedly Rwandan, but they hide behind a Congolese middleman who's been keeping the lawsuit alive in the courts.
People in Rwanda are set to commemorate the deadly genocide in the country 25 years after it took place. Annual commemorations are held in Rwanda from April 7th to the 13th. Afterwards, an honorary 3 months of remembrance takes place. This period is in observance of the 3 months which the genocide spanned. Survivors use the annual commemoration as a healing process. The genocide, which took place in 1994, resulted in more than 800,000 deaths.
Commemorating makes us strong. It helps us achieve what we had not achieved and makes us think what we should stand up for the Rwandan people who have left us to have a better country that is not characterized by ethnicity as it was in the past.
Saif al-Islam Gaddafi, son of the late Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi, is to run as a candidate in the country's presidential elections this year. His candidacy was announced by Libyan Popular Front party officials during a news conference in Tunis on Monday. The Gaddafis have support especially in the south and the Warshifana region around Tripoli, where the late president was born. In July 2015, a court in Tripoli sentenced Saif al-Islam to death for war crimes. He was later exempted and released following a general pardon. Indian voters have expressed their expectations ahead of general elections taking place this week. A coalition led by Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his Bharatiya Janata Party seeks to retain power in the general election, which has about 900 million eligible voters. More than 2,000 political parties will take part in the elections.
We want Modi to win again, but his government should do something for our people. They spoke already developed in this area, but nothing much has happened.
So I think I'll support Rahul Gandhi anytime. I mean, I see a leader in him, and I need an educated leader. I need to see a prime minister who talks about education and peace and love.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.